dispensation of the eternal and only truth. During war, great forces of destruction are afoot, which at times might seem to be dominant. But constructive forces for the redemption of humanity are also released through various channels. Though the working of these latter forces is largely silent, eventually they are bound to bring about the transformations that will render safe and steady the further spiritual progress of humanity.
We always say that the world is going to dogs, that the world is becoming worse day by day, and we say that that is not a fact. The fact of the matter is that, as Baba says, there is no creature which is not destined for the supreme goal, as there is no river which is not winding its way to the sea. In other words, everything in creation has to finally experience oneness. Everything. So that is the blueprint, that is the plan, that is the divine plan. And howsoever apparently it may appear to go against the divine plan, ultimately it will end up in that. So wars, Baba says, they may appear, as something very disastrous, as something, but simultaneously, along with the so-called bad things happening out there at the superfluous level, there are very many good things which are happening below the level, which we are not very aware of. Even in today's world, there are so many good things happening. Genuine NGOs which are serving the humanity in such a beautiful, genuine I am talking about, way. So many genuine people, so many good people, but those do not get the necessary publicity. They do not get exposure, and therefore we, because of our limited exposure to whether it be television or Facebook or WhatsApp or Twitter or whatever, and people like to aggrandize things which are negative. You see, it is very common that when some positive forward is received, we tend to not to forward it. But if something negative or something very, that kind of aspect sensational comes, then we want to do that. So because we all have that mindset, even the media, you see any television, we don't have a television at home, but whenever I go to my in-law, mother-in-law, there's only television and only fighting and only all the negative things are coming on the screen, giving an impression, a false impression, that the world is really going to dogs. But actually there are so many good things happening. So here Baba says, the final level from which the causes of war spring is no level at all, for it is a part of the divine plan of God. Baba says we talk about level, individual level, social level and all that. So finally there is no such thing as level. Baba says it is the divine plan. It is all factored in the divine plan. The divine plan is such that people, in a sense, would go the wrong way. This is my interpretation. Go the wrong way, suffer, get the lessons, learning the lessons from there, and then take a U-turn and move on. So that aspect is very essential, because Baba in one of the messages says, that nobody takes to the search of God as a voluntary and joyous enterprise or an experience. Nobody takes to that. I want to search God. He is driven to it through the disillusionments of the world. He is driven because that means that is the blueprint. You have to go into disillusionment. You have to go into what is called, we call it wrong, and then take a U-turn and then move on to the higher level. So basically Baba says that there is no such thing as level, for it is a part of the divine plan of God to give to a hungry and weary world a fresh dispensation of the eternal and only truth. In other words, it is all drawn out as a divine plan, that ultimately you have, it's like the ocean, you tides, you have the ebb and the high tide, you have the low tide and the high tide, you have the high waves and the low waves. So this is all a game, as I understand Baba saying, it's all in the divine plan, and in order to give the tired and the weary, and what is the word Baba uses? The hungry and the weary world, a fresh dispensation of eternal and only truth. And for that, it seems that war becomes a necessary evil. During war, great forces of destruction are afoot, which at times might seem to be dominant. It may appear that everywhere there is destruction. But if you see any construction or anything new has to have a precedent, which is a destruction. So it is a destruction and then there is construction. And it seems that destruction seems to be dominant at the time of war, but constructive forces for the redemption of humanity are also released through various channels. Through various spiritual channels, constructive forces are also released. Though the working of these latter forces are largely silent. The positive forces are largely silent. Eventually, they are bound to bring about the transformations that will render safe and steady the further spiritual progress of humanity. In other words, as I understand, ultimately humanity has to reach the safe and steady progress towards oneness, towards the truth. And it is all in the divine plan. All these wars are in the divine plan. Now, whatever little that we know about Baba's way of functioning, it appears, as I say, in my interpretation, that the Third World War was like imminent. It has to be. And Baba said that it would be much worse than the earlier war, where there will be total destruction, lot of things, Baba would say. And it seems that Baba asked the Mandali people as to what would they prefer, a real full-scale war, or as we say, skirmishes, chamakla, here and there, the earthquakes and the tsunami and little war here and little war there. And everybody there in one voice said that we would like this and not the full-fledged war. So what we are seeing now perhaps is a result of what Baba had decided at that time, that okay, let me relieve you from a full-fledged Third World War, but let me give you these kinds of skirmishes.
Regardless of the political and economic factors described by the historian as he looks at war in retrospect, from the spiritual point of view, this sanguine phenomenon is a cyclic divine ferment over which no earthly power has control. There are always two aspects of divinity that are eternally active in the affairs of the world. In Persian, the destructive aspect of divinity is termed self-glorification and the constructive aspect self-beatitude. When the self-glorification aspect of God predominates, there is destruction and suffering on a colossal scale as in the last World War. The aspect of divine beatitude, on the other hand, brings peace and plenty. These are usually the golden ages of civilization.
So one thing is sure and certain, that it is a part and parcel of the divine plan. There is nothing much you can do except how can we take advantage of this for our own benefit. It's like those Ahmedabadis, we call it, Ahmedabadis, people from Ahmedabad, they have this peculiar trait. They will always like to know what others are doing. They are not bothered about themselves. Everybody who is doing what, they want to do that. And the second is, whatever they may be doing, उसमें मेरा फायदा क्या है? What is in it for me? What? It's just a joke, of course. So it is said, one fine day, this Olympic torch was to go from one of the towns of Ahmedabad. So all the people had gathered over there, they were gathering over there. So there is always one senior over there. Kaka, who what are they doing? બરતું લઈ જાય છે, ટોર્ચ લઈ જાય છે કરીને. He is going there, you know. But second question, कि what is in it for me? उसमें हमको क्या फायदा है करके. तो काका एमा आपू हूँ. What is what? So when that torch bearer was going, you know, he said immediately stop. So that torch bearer stopped over there. You know. चलो बीड़ी फूकी लोगे. Light your biddies with that fire. So that means they are so focused on how whatever may be happening out there, how can we take benefit from it? It's a good philosophy. It's a very good philosophy. So once we also learn that art, that irrespective of what is, what happened, irrespective of what is happening out there, because you can't control war. You can't control destruction. You know, you can't control so many things that are happening out there. But how can we take advantage of that? Spiritual advantage. I'm talking not Bidi Bhuknega. Spiritual advantage. How can we take? How can we take spiritual advantage of that in developing our own selflessness, in developing our love, in being outgoing to help others. You know, and not to think about ourselves. So we can use that particular aspect of war as a platform for us to grow. In other words, so your Baba says, regardless of the political and economic factors, what we get to know is only political and economic factors described by the historian as he looks at war in retrospect. Because most of the history, if you see, are written by historians. The very word history means that something has passed, something has happened, and somebody is writing. So it is his story. And really, after so many hundreds of years, there is no, it never happened like this, but it happened like that. So now, which is the true story, we really do not know. So whatever maybe the historian may be doing it in retrospect, from the spiritual point of view, this sanguine phenomenon, sanguine means bloody phenomenon which is, you know, is a cyclical divine ferment, like fermentation. Cyclical, see the choice of words Baba is using. Cyclical divine ferment over which no earthly power has control. It is fermenting. Wars are nothing but the result of fermenting. You know, when you put that dosa ka mix, it ferments, you know, or idli mix over there. I get to see that. Not at home, but in my mother-in-law's place. She makes it. Now, day after tomorrow, she is going to make it because we are going to Pune. So she gets up early in the morning and makes it. Anyway, so there is a fermentation. So this ferment, irrespective of what, this ferment, using a beautiful word, cyclic divine ferment. You can't help it. Over which no earthly power has control. You cannot control it. It has to be. So when we know that it has to be, there is nothing you can do, then what you can do is how best we can use that to our advantage. So that is also a very beautiful principle that we have to inculcate in our life, as to when we have no control over what is happening, how can we use it for our advantage. And when I say advantage, I don't mean selfish advantage, I mean from a point of view of spiritual advantage. There's a nice saying, and we've been repeating this often. God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Very beautiful. God, give me the serenity to accept the change, what did I say? Okay, God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. There are certain things you cannot change. There is no way, we say this, imagine the insanity of not accepting what is. Insanity means madness. Imagine the insanity of not accepting what is. Because what is just is. You cannot change it. It is. So you must have the serenity to accept it. Because the moment we accept those things which we cannot change, we do not waste our energy in why me, poor me, it should not have happened to me. Had I come 5 minutes before, it would not have happened, or all that nonsense, It has happened, except the things I cannot change. So instead of wasting our time in that, we invest our time and energy. Now what? What is the solution? So God give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. There are certain things which are in your power. You see, as a homemaker, you have got the power to see that your kamwali comes on time or jharu is done well. You have got the power you have got power over certain things based on where you are placed in life. So courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Which I have to accept, I cannot change. Which I can change, I must have the courage to go forward and change it. So in the same way here, Baba says that because this is a cyclic ferment over which no earthly power has any control, we have to accept it and make the best use of it. There are always two aspects of divinity. They are eternally active in the affairs of the world. Divinity has two aspects. One is impartial. The destructive aspect of divinity is termed self-glorification, and the constructive aspect is called self-beatitude. Self-beatitude. Now, I don't understand how self-glorification can be destructive, but anyway. Yeah, but it's a divine aspect. We are not talking about I as a limited I. These are divine aspects. But anyway,
Glorification is what is destructive.
that's what I'm saying. It says, one minute. I am saying I don't understand how. Yes, self-glorification means ego, I agree. But Baba says they are divine attributes. I am not talking about my limited I. Anyway, so we'll go by what Baba is saying, obviously, because as Baba says, whether you understand it or not, it is, whatever you hear from the Master, never say it is false. For my dear, the fault lies in your own incapacity to understand Him. Hafiz. So you can't help it, you have to accept. When the self-glorification aspect of God predominates, there is destruction and suffering on a colossal scale, as in the last World War. The aspect of divine beatitude, on the other hand, brings peace and plenty. These are usually the golden ages of civilization. Even civilization has got all cyclical ages. So when we are talking about the beatitude, obviously he is meaning about the peace and prosperity and contentment and all that. So these are the golden ages.